Hello and welcome. You are listening to The Hello You Show. I'm your host, Jessica Rice, and the founder of Jessica Rice Coaching. This show is for ambitious and visionary-minded women leaders and entrepreneurs ready to uplevel their impact and establish their personal brand and unique voice. It's time, ladies, to make our voices heard. Say hello again to the real you. Hello, welcome to the Hello You Show. I'm your host, Jessica Rice, and I am so excited to share with you my very first guest on the Hello You Show, Sonja Holmes, who is an amazing HR recruiter and who's here to share with us her message for other women who are looking to up-level in their careers. I just want to share a little bit about her. Sonja is a senior recruiter with over a decade of HR and experience with an emphasis on talent acquisition and development. She's also a wife and a mom of 4 children. I don't know how you do that. Podcast host of the Own Your Work podcast, and is passionate about seeing professionals get clear on what they do well and leverage that to enhance and enlarge and advance their careers. So I'm so excited to bring Sonja on. I am inspired by her story and I can't wait to share with you. So welcome, Sonja. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here too, Jessica. Thanks so much for having me as your guest. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So there we go. So first, I just wanted to share, I was listening to your podcast. It's so inspirational, and we were definitely share the information for our guests so that they can come and listen to the information that you have to share also. And I listened to a little bit of your origin story and how you kind of came up, but I'd love to hear in your own words, what really got you here where you are today?
Yeah, I feel like it's a combination of a couple of different things. But, in one of the episode I think that you're referring to, I was sharing my origin story. And I really believe sometimes it's getting clarity, as much clarity as you can, right? Because you don't always know what you don't know, but getting clarity in an idea or a sense of what it is that you do well, what you want to do, what you're like genuinely interested in. And so when I started out, I went to college, I got my bachelor's in communications. And then right out of college, I started working for a management training program. And immediately when I started working there, I always knew that I wanted to do something either like training and development or like coaching or teaching or something in that space. Like I wanted to help like motivate people. And I knew this about me because, previous to, working in that particular job, I had been, a Sunday school teacher for adults while I was in college. And I actually just love when like the light bulb went off to people, when you're able to take ideas, maybe complex or maybe hard to understand, and then just like break it down in a way that anyone, even a 5-year-old, can understand it, right? And then when that light bulb goes off, usually a transformation happens. So I knew that I always wanted to do something around that area. I knew that light, like that lit me up. So I remember going into, even my first day of orientation, I shared how I went to the trainer, and I went to her during a break and I said, I want to do what you're doing. I want to be like a trainer in development, manager. I want to be in training development. I want to be in HR. And I remember her response to me. It was, oh, that's so cute. I love that. I love that. But first, you got to get promoted into management. Everyone in our HR department, they start within management first. And then, there's a track for that, for this eventually. But I want to be honest with you, and she shared with me that everybody in those roles had been there for like 10 plus years and they didn't open up, quite often. So she kind of like level set with me. And now in hindsight, I'm like, that's probably not the best thing to do, right? Go to someone and say like, hey, I want your job. That's not what I was trying to do. But I was just so excited because I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I knew that I had an interest in it. So that's kind of like my origin story, how I, knew that I wanted to eventually get into HR, possibly training and development, because I wanted to root people on. I love doing it in my personal life. I love doing it, outside of work. So I knew I wanted to do something that realm, and that's how I landed, or got into HR, and that's how it all began for me. So I didn't start in the traditional role, right? I started in on the sales path, but eventually end up getting promoted to where I was like eligible and to be, ready and eligible for the HR position for when it did come available. So.
Well, I love that you share that story with us. And what is it that really drives you forward or keeps you moving forward now that you've kind of come into this place in your life?
Yeah. So I think it's a couple things, number one, I think, obviously being a mom of four has really changed the way that I work in a way. But I think a lot as like I feel like every time that I've given birth to a new version of myself. I've gotten closer to who I am and who I want to be, right? And so I feel like with every birth that I had given, it was like a birth or evolution of me. And so that is part of my why. That's part of what drives me. But then, to be completely honest, Jessica, part of it is like where I actually started and came from, and like this message, knowing that like if I can do it, I know that anyone can do it. I know that, the odds were against me. I know that I was not put in this position. I know that I had my set challenges, circumstantial, and I overcome a lot. And so for me, I feel like in a sense that I've been to the well, in a sense, like metaphorically. And I feel
Mm.
like I've been to the well, and I want to bring back the water. I want to bring back the water to those who may feel uninspired, who feel like they can't achieve whatever it is that they want to, that, their success is outside of their own hands. Like, I feel like I've been able to do a piece of that for myself. And I just want to share, like, it's possible, the message, and then like the how about it, right? How do you hear yourself? How do you know your inner voice? How do you, get clear on what you want? How do you, put a strategy and a plan in place to actually get there, right? So I really believe that is possible. And I think part of me feels like, in some sense, I've been to the well, and I want to bring back the water. So those are the two, I think, biggest thing that motivates me. Number one, that being a mother, which has changed me in the way that I show up. That's number one. And I think the other part is knowing where I've come from, knowing how I've evolved, and knowing what's possible and what's happened for me. I know that it can happen for others. And not to say even the same thing, right? Because I think we all have our own definition of success. What I'm saying is, whatever success looks like for you, whatever it is that you want, if you have that vision, like, and you get clear on it, I believe that you can make it happen. And so that's just kind of like my message, and what I really, hope to share with people, and what I also share in my podcast as well.
Well, you just gave me goosebumps right now with how you're sharing, and you're so passionate. I just felt like, okay, I'm signing up for whatever because you are infectious. Oh my goodness. I
Thank
just
you.
love the message that you have to share, and I can feel it coming from you so genuinely, which is
Mm,
exactly why we're here. I mean, I think women
yeah.
really do need to hear this message so much more, that we can do so much more regardless of the challenges that we have faced. And so,
Yes.
speaking of challenges, you mentioned that you've gone through some things in your life, and
Mhm.
then you mentioned you have your beautiful children, and each time that renewed in you the sense of purpose, and now here you are sharing your message.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing with us, maybe what is a challenge that you really had to overcome in order to kind of, what was that breakthrough to get you now sharing this?
Yeah. So I think for me, part of it has been finding my voice, right? Finding my voice. And I think there's this idea that if you do good work alone, that your work will speak for itself. Your work is going to open doors for you. Your work will get you noticed. And I think that's table stakes. And I think one of the challenges is that sometimes we think, doing good work alone is going to, open the doors, get us recognition, get us where we want to be. But it's that comes with its own set of challenges, because a lot of times it's not just doing good work, it's working on the right things, but your work does not speak for itself. You actually have to learn how to speak for your work and really get clear on the value and the impact that you are actually making, and then articulating that. And I think for me, so like challenges that I've seen, or just struggle or felt frustrated and stuck at work, was when I knew that I was doing good work, right? You're crushing your goals, you're hitting your performance goals, you're, going above and beyond, right? You're even maybe taking on the role like of others as well too. Maybe the volume has increased as well. And a lot of times I thought like, okay, that's the good work. That is the thing that's going to, help me to stand out, right? And yeah, that might have done some things for my reviews, but what I've learned that it wasn't about volume, because if you continue to try to sell, like if that's your selling point, right? Then you're going to put yourself in positions where you find yourself burnt out, where you're just limiting, even when it comes to the influence that you have, when it comes to your earnings, right? And actually getting paid, not your worth, because I think you're worth more than a paycheck, but getting paid the worth for the actual value, the impact that you're making. So I think what happened for me is like that switch going off and saying, okay, I know that I'm doing good work. Good work isn't good enough, right? So, what is the right work that I need to be working on, right? What are the right projects that I need to be working on? And then, how do I get out of this uncomfortable like state, this unease of selling and promoting myself and finding my voice and actually being okay with speaking for my work and speaking for the impact that I'm making? Because there's a definite difference between, just doing a lot of work versus like quantity, and actually making high impact, like blast radius impact, right? So I think the challenge for me was, at times I found myself feeling stuck at work, feeling like, how do I get out of this rut? How do I get out of, this cap of feeling underutilized, because I knew I had more to give. I knew that my skills were like, not fully aligned. I was doing things that probably I was operating more of, when you're doing more of the things that you don't enjoy doing, right? Instead of more of the things that you actually enjoy doing, that you're really good at, your powers. I felt like I was doing more of the things that were draining versus fulfilling, and being underutilized, being unnoticed. And as a byproduct of that, usually when you're doing those things, you're probably under earning as well too. So I think when I, got a little more strategic on, okay, what is the right work that I need to be doing, right? Saying yes to the right projects, higher impact work, right? It allowed me to position myself so I had the stories to tell and be ready for when those bigger opportunities came, that I was able to then sell, what I was doing, and being able to really speak to the impact and articulate, how I actually got those particular results and the impact that it was making. So I think, again, just kind of recapping, was the challenge was feeling stuck. And as a mom of four, like my time, like I want to make sure that if I'm away, like I'm getting the most, like I'm feeling fulfilled, and feeling like, I'm using my powers, feeling energized at work versus drained, and coming back home where, I'm emotionally exhausted, burnt out from being underutilized, unnoticed, unrecognized, and under earning, all those things, right? To getting clear and getting into a position where I do feel like, okay, I have the right balance of the challenge and the stretch. And the right, where I do feel like, yes, I'm being compensated for the value that I'm doing for this particular work. And that I'm also getting the recognition, as well too, and making an impact as well too, that I'm actually making an impact. And that is like, just really important to me. So I think those are some of the challenges and kind of how like I navigated through it a little bit.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And as you were talking, I was just thinking that you had this moment of clarity where you really understood your value, your worth, and really what you bring to the table, because we are not operating at our best when we are overwhelmed and we're taking on everything else. How can
Yeah,
we possibly really shine for the ways that we are intended to, with the natural talents and skills that we have, when we're trying
yeah,
to be everything?
Mhm.
especially, in our jobs. It's just so much. And then you're coming home and you're trying to be, a mom, and you're trying to take care of all of that, and we're spent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really
Right.
love that. And I
Yes.
love that you were saying that you found, finding your voice and really finding your value in there so that you could really demonstrate the work, but not just. I think oftentimes that's so true. Women just think that the work will just speak for itself. And if we
Mhm.
don't speak for it, and if we don't help it to shine, now we're just putting all of that into someone else's hands and hoping that they will
Mhm.
recognize it instead of taking our power back and really,
Mhm.
claiming that this is ours and we have put so much of ourselves into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm,
So good.
so I'm so curious. So, what inspired you? Have your podcast. What inspired
Mhm.
you to kind of get that going for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things, like it's been on my heart for a while, but part of finding my voice was like being able to exercise it and practice it. So I'm really big on if there's an area or something that you're working on, right? If it's the area where you want to continue to develop on, and it could be something that you might already be, naturally inclined for, something that you kind of have a gifting for, but you still need opportunity to grow. You still need practice at it, right? So I was really intentional about finding my voice, at work, but I also wanted to continue to sharpen that. I want to get better at my communication skills. I want to improve, but I also have a message to share as well too. So I figure why not start my own practice projects, right? I do practice projects at work, right? It's when you take on a project that's going to help you develop in certain skills. It's very strategic. It's a strategic yes that you raise your hand for. But for me, I wanted to create my own practice field, my own, playing field where I'm getting practice, where I'm honing in my skills, where I'm honing in even on my messaging and my communication, and I'm just getting better at it, right? So for me, like I'm playing and I'm exploring and I'm figuring the whole thing out. It's something that I wanted to do, but for me, a lot of it is practice. I'm practicing, on my communication skills. I am practicing my messaging, right? And the other part of it is I genuinely do. I am so passionate. As I mentioned before, like I love when the light bulb goes off for people, when it's like, I got it, right? I think I can do this. And then people walk away and they feel like, okay, like I can take this complex idea or this mystical idea or this thing that I didn't understand. And now I can actually take it and put it into practice. That's like a light bulb moment. And it allows, when you take information and actually be able to apply it, it allows for transformation. So I love when that
Mhm.
happened. And I love being in the midst of that. So for me, having a message of, you know what, I believe that you actually can create the career that you want. I believe that you can, get clear on what you want to do and create, I call it your best work life yet, a work life that actually works for you, right? And, I've been on this journey for doing it for myself. And like, it's been amazing. It's been fun. It's been exciting. And I want to see that happen for others as well, too. So I'm just, practicing number one, but I'm also sharing as well, too, my journey and what I'm learning along the way. Like, I so want this for my community, the Own Your Work. Like, become like a community. I talk with people who've listened to episodes and what they're learning and how they're putting things in place. And like, we really are like a community. So it's just me sharing some of the things that I've learned. As I mentioned earlier, I feel like in a way, a sense, I've been to the well, a little bit, and I just want to bring back the water, right? So that others can drink. So that is really, a big part of like my why. Those are really the two big reasons. Practice, is a practice project for me, but it's also sharing my message. So others can kind of like do the same for themselves. Um, but I'm sharing not from a mountain. I want to be really clear about that because it's a part of a journey. And I'm not, there's different places that we can share, right? You can be on the mountaintop, like, here, I've arrived, I'm here, dun, dun, dun. Like, no, like, even in very high points, I'm still a student and I'm still learning. And I feel like for me with the Own Your Work podcast and the community, it's like, hey, I'm in the field with you. I'm on this journey. Let me show you some of the things that I'm learning versus being on the mountaintop. So I feel like I'm very in the field. This is my journey. I'm inviting my community into my journey as well too, but I'm also like asking for an invitation to be a part of their journey as well too. So yeah.
Wow. That is so inspiring, to be honest. You're infectious and the joy, and I can feel that, like you said, this is the journey that you're on. And I love that you took this approach of, I'm not going to let fear stand in my way. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to practice it and I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to see what comes of this, and really honing those skills as a result, which you're teaching other women in that you don't have to have a certain status. I think that we sometimes feel like we have to have arrived, like you just said, from this mountaintop. We have to have arrived and we have to be there before we can start, following these other steps. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so not true. We just have to show up. We just have to
Mm-hmm.
start. And if we don't start, we will never do it. So I love
Yeah.
that message that is just go have fun and play and bring some joy into your life and what it is that you bring to other people. And I really loved
Yeah.
how you said, I'm inviting others to come on this journey with me and for you also to be a part of the journey with others. I think that's such a special gift that you're providing, but it's a partnership and people are coming on it with you. So it's a very
Yeah.
beautiful message that you have to share.
Thank
So
you.
curious, what's next for you? What's the next step?
Yeah.
So are you looking for people to work with you in that way?
Yeah. So it's funny. I do unfortunately, right now, I'm very honest about the capacity that I do have and what I don't have, right? And what I'm saying yes to in the season and what I'm, unfortunately saying, no to. So one of the things I said yes to was sharing, not into like a one-to-one setting, but more of a one-to-one, one-to-many, which is, kind of like why of the podcast, like where I get to speak to many. But what that does, unfortunately made me have to say no to in the season is the one-on-ones. Like currently I only do like one-on-ones, and mentoring and coaching within my current organization. So I'm not taking on right now, just at this time, any like coaching clients. I've done that in the past, but I'm not doing one to one. But my yes in this season, I am still sharing and I'm still like creating resources and everything. Of like the things that I have done with one-to-one, like the things that you can take in the tools and that you can, implement into your own life and like use as your self-coaching, self-coaching, like your guide through. So there's a lot of different things I've like created, from mini courses to planners to the things that I've actually used in my own like life, and that I just create these things and I share them also too with my community, and with, my listeners. So I have those things. So, if someone wants to work with me, I say the best thing right now is to, connect with me. You can like be a part of my community. If you go to sonjaholmes.com, there's a lot of different resources that I do have available on my site. One in particular is, where I actually share 21 like high impact growth ideas, like different projects that you can say yes to. And these are just like ideas because unfortunately, I just don't have the capacity right now to say yes to one-on-ones. But there are a lot of different things that I offer, which is more of a one-to-many, which is, taking the things that I have done one-to-one and putting it in, like the products that I have. And a lot of them are actually free, those resources that I have available. Like I make that available to, the people that I connect with. So I think the best way to connect with me is, on my site, either sonjaholmes.com. You can go to sonjaholmes.com /ideas, and that's where you can get like a whole list of like my growth projects, like high impact driving projects, on like how you can bring high value to your organization. And then I have a lot of other goodies that I usually share with my community. So that's the way to work with me. That's how you connect with me. At this time, it's going to be through the podcast. It's going to be connecting through my site, and the resources that I make available right now. But I have been asked that, and I always hate it when I have to say, like, no, I'm not taking on anyone right now, because I do get that. And I think eventually I'll probably begin to open the doors for that when the timing is right. I want to make sure that when I am serving people, that I am giving, I'm able to give my best and really serve them right. And I know that right now where I'm focusing on, like, one to many, which is through like the podcast and the resources that I make available. And then also, like, I'm a mom, right? And I have all these other things going on and I work full time. I can't possibly, like, continue, also have that, right? And then still make time for myself. I got to care for myself. So, that's my yes in this season. Really, it is like more so one to many than one to one. But, you know, when that door opens, I'll definitely be letting those in my community be the first to know so that they can get, on the wait list or whatever.
Oh my goodness. Such a joy. I love how you have this in my season right now. This is what I'm doing. And you're still providing so much value to others out there with all of these your ideas. We'll put the link into the podcast and all of the information as well so that everyone can go and find it easily.
Yes,
So thank you
ma'am.
so much for sharing that. And I love that you are setting some boundaries for yourself right now, too, because we do have to take care of ourselves. This journey
Mm,
can really start to become overwhelming if we don't recognize and
yeah,
really walk in that integrity like you're talking about, where we have to create and set boundaries and balance for ourselves so that we can bring our
yeah,
best forward. And so it sounds like that's a great message for for everyone too, which is you don't have to try to take it all on at once. It's just
yeah,
little by little steps you add in, and then you can take away what's not serving you in that season. And then you can
yeah,
maybe bring it back. Different
yeah,
ways that we can work with people. I love it.
yeah.
Any other, um, what's the other message that you would like to share today with women?
Yeah. I think overall, um, I feel like part of like why I named the podcast, right, is own your work. Is that you really own your work. And I think if, like, that's the message, right? I deeply believe that there's so much more to you than the work that you do. And it's funny, I while I'm saying that, I'm like laughing at myself because I say it at the end of my podcast every time. I'm like, there's so much more to you than the work that you do. Own your work. Don't let work own you, right? And I laugh while I say that. And like that is the message that I have because I think, you know, while I'm really excited, I'm very passionate about the things that I do at work, right? Impact, driving value, all those different things. I also realize that there's so much more to me than the work that I do. Like, there's so much more to me as a person. I'm so much more valuable than a title. I'm so much more valuable than, a performance review. I'm so much more valuable. I'm worth so much more than my productivity, right? And so I think overall, like that is the message. That is the message. And that's the one that I'm constantly learning every day. And that I'm also like always reevaluating myself towards because it's so easy for me. And I've done a lot of self work in this, still doing as well too. But to get our identity caught up into and wrapped into our work, the value, the accolades, the accomplishments, all the different things. And while I do help people accomplish things, I also believe so deeply, right, that you have an intrinsic, innate value and worth that cannot be, right, that's worth so much more than a paycheck. That's worth so much more than a performance review, right? At the end of the day, all of those things can be ripped from you. Your title, right? That's usually temporary. Your job, the function, your salary, all those things, it can change, right? But the things that people can't take from you is your character, who you are, what you've learned, right? How you view yourself, right? And like for me, like those are the things that like I deeply want for myself to know, right? And that I also want for listeners to know as well too. There's so much more to you than your work, right? It's fun to accomplish things, but there's so much more to you than that. Own your work. Don't let work own you. Okay. Okay. Like that's what I want people to know. Like Got it.
I feel like you're speaking to me. And I think that that's I love yes, I think that's definitely what we need to hear because we get so wrapped up. I feel like our identity sometimes becomes our career, and we don't know
Mhm.
how to separate that from ourselves, ourselves from that work or our career. So there is so much more to us. And so that if we want to shift, or we want to transition, or things aren't maybe in the direction that we're hoping to go, or, things aren't always
Yeah.
going the way that we hope, we can detach from that, and we're not making it all about who we are, our worth, our value, because we have so much more to offer. And we don't always know what that next step in our chapter or our journey is going to look like. I love that
Yeah.
you said it's so much more than a performance review. I was listening to a TED talk that was talking about why are we still using resumes in the same capacity when you can't possibly fit an entire person onto one piece,
Mm.
one page of paper. There's so
Yeah.
much more to us. And I
Yes.
know you work in that space. So, you know, I think that what your message is, it's hope, it's delivering to women that they can succeed and that there's so much more that they can do. Any tips for women in terms of, what should they do if they're really looking to step out in their career and up level, and, there are things that they
Mm.
should think about when they're starting to do that?
Yeah. So number one, I it's funny. I call it like the P's to promotions or like just strategic career moves. Like not it doesn't always necessarily have to be a promotion. Sometimes it's enhancing, sometimes it's enlarging, and sometimes it is, advancing. But, so number one, I always say like the first P is for is like the psychology, which is like the mindset, actually believing that, you not even just you can do it, right? But you actually can that no matter what like the circumstances are, that like if you're doing the right work, like things will align for you, right? And that opportunities can number one be created for you, doors can open for you. Like I've 100% witnessed it, like literally positions created, right? So I think like the first part is like, the psychology of it, right? But part of it is like we can't control the outcome of it. We can't control like when a promotion happens, but you can control your promotability, which is being promotable means being ready and eligible, right? So you can focus on the things that you can do and you have control over. That's the first like P, which is a mindset, what you actually have control over, right? And then I think another part is actually getting clear on like what you want to do, right? And I call this pin the position, right? This is when you really get focused on what is the position that I want. Now, here's the caveat, we're human and you actually have the right, you reserve the right to change and evolve. But I think getting clarity on in a sense of what you actually want to do allows for a lot of different things to happen. Number one, it allows for you to be intentional, and it actually allows you to say, okay, what is the things that I should start working on to like ready myself, right? So when you get clarity on the position that you want, you actually know the things that you need to start doing. So, for example, if I know that I want to get into a leadership role, right? What I can do is at certain companies, they have leveling guides, they have performance like evaluation reviews for those particular roles, right? This is where you're looking at where you are today, right? And then you're looking at the position that you want, and you're actually going through line by line and seeing, okay, what the skills that I currently have, right? What don't I have, right? And then what do I have, but I haven't had like the opportunity to show? And then you're going through line by line, you're actually understanding what do I have? What are my gaps so that you can actually bridge the gaps and take on the right practice projects? And I talked about practice projects earlier, but it's actually saying yes to the right work. I think a lot of times we think about just doing more work, but it's actually being more intentional and more strategic in saying yes to the right types of work. And I think another really big part of it is if somebody really wants to like position themselves and take control of their career, right? Number one, like that mindset, that psychology, then getting clear on the position that you want, taking on the right kind of projects. And then the other part of it is I feel like I have a whole like list that I usually go down when I'm working with people one on one or like teaching. But for the sake of time, I can't get through to all of them. But I think the most important parts is, understanding what you are actually good at. I call this other piece like the powers, right? A lot of times people call them the superpowers, but I like to call them powers. Those are the things that you are just naturally good at, the things that you probably do better than most people. That comes easily for you, right? And there's some things on the job that you actually do really well, right? The things that you are actually known for, those are clues to your power. So get really clear on not only the position that you want, but actually your powers, and then your passions, the things that you have an interest in, because those pieces are so important to creating a work life that's actually like fulfilling as well too, because then you set yourself up to be in a position where you're working on the right things, but you're also doing a job that's leveraging the things that you do well, where you're operating, from a place of your strengths and not just like your weaknesses, and that can be depleting and demoralizing, right? But you're operating in a place where you're doing things that you actually do well, you're doing things that you have an interest in, sometimes passionate about, and usually those things energize you. So that's how we find like more energy even in our work. And then the other part of like, it's not even just doing the right work, right? But the other part is, as I mentioned before, I say this is probably like the biggest thing that I want people to start working on is like learn how to articulate your success. And that is not just understanding and writing a list down of your accomplishments. I think a lot of times, people do that and they think like, oh, I know all the things that I've accomplished and they have it all written down. But I think there's a deeper element to that really does position you to make a higher impact. And that is actually showing your work and being able to articulate how it started. What was the challenges? A good format is like the STAR. So it helps you to tell really good stories. A lot of people use it for interviewing. But I think you should always be interviewing, right? And being able to use that story format. And then also too, so being able to articulate it and then showing your work and sharing it as well too. And this is where work becomes repeatable and scalable. When you make your work repeatable and scalable, then you're able to make a higher like impact, as well too. And so I think those are kind of like high overview of like the biggest things that I usually really like teach, part of the pillars, that I just teach, over the Own Your Work podcast and a lot of resources that I put together. But these are things that I've have done in my past as well too. Just getting clear on what it is that I wanted to do, getting clear in a good sense on what I actually do well, my powers and the passions, the things that energizes me, right? Saying yes to the right kind of work, and then really learning how to articulate and show the impact of my work, and then sharing it as well too, because it's not just about you getting results, but how are you making a bigger impact. And a lot of times your work becomes scalable when you made your process so clear and understandable that you can repeat it and get the same success again. But then it's scalable because then it's easy, where it's not something that's just in your head and something that you can do, but you've broken it down in a way where others can now do it. Other people who may be struggling in these particular area, now they can do it and get similar results. And that's when it becomes scalable. So I think, if someone is looking to make, again, create their best work life, get the position that they want, I really do think it comes down to those things, as I mentioned. Know the position that you want, know your powers and your strengths, know that you can, right? That's the psychology part of it. But then being able to articulate, and show it and sell it, as well. So.
Oh my goodness. So good. And I love how at the end, I mean, not only did you just break it down, but also you are making it so that not only is it scalable, but they are also becoming a mentor at the same time. So now their
Mhm.
worth has really increased in the sense that you're not just doing it for yourself, but now you can teach and show other people the things that you have done also, which leads to so many
Yeah.
other opportunities, as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it
So,
becomes part of your story. Like,
yes,
becomes
yes.
part of, like, others, right? Their development, you're mentoring them, but it also becomes part of your story as well too, and that's the blast radius impact, right? Where, like, it wasn't just my results, but then it began to scale. This was the ripple effect of it because I shared these things, and this is the bigger impact that it had on the organization when, I was able to repeat this for myself and also scale it and share it with others. So anyway, sorry, I get a little.
Oh my God. No, this is such good information to share with everyone because this is what we need to know. And I think that sometimes we're going through our careers and we're we don't know what we're supposed to do. We don't know what we don't know. So we
Mhm.
just are guessing sometimes. If we don't have the right resources that we're tapping into, we're just kind of going along and hoping,
Yeah.
rather than being strategic and deliberate with how we're using our time, as you've talked about, how we're selling basically our own work and being that voice for ourselves, how we're able to really break down everything that we're doing and using that 4 Ps that you were mentioning, and being able to take back control, take back our power of our careers and do something with it so that we can create a greater impact. It doesn't mean that we have to be floating in the wind and just hoping, which is not going
Right.
to lead us to what we're hoping, right? You said you've been to the
Yeah.
well and now you're bringing the water, and you truly are. It's been such a joy
Aw,
to have you on here.
thank
Uh,
you. This has been
so,
so fun.
thank you so much for coming on today. I so greatly appreciate your time and willingness to share all of your insights. What's one last message that you would like to deliver?
Hmm. You know, I feel like I kinda already said it, but I gotta repeat it, right? There's so much more to you than the work that you do. Own your work. Like, that's it. There's so much more to you than work. And that's, like, the message, the one thing if I can leave with anybody, that I ever meet is that you're worth so much more. There's so much more to you than work and performance. And, like, I think that's the resounding message that I have.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that's an important reminder that we all can walk away with, because we have value and we have worth, and our work is important, but so is the rest of our lives and everything else that we bring that we can't fit into a little package in just our job sometimes. There's so much
Mhm.
more out there for us. Again, find you on sonjaholmes.com.
Mhm.
Any other
It's
places that they should be?
SONJA.
Mhm. SONJA
Yeah.
Holmes.com.
Yep.
They can reach
Yep.
out to you and get to know you, and we will put the information for your resources in the podcast so that they know where to get a hold of some of these amazing
Yeah.
resources and information that you're sharing with us today. So again,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited that you were my first podcast guest. Very exciting. Thank you so much.
This is so fun.
It's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. I feel so lit up now. It's going to be a great day.
Awesome. Likewise. Thank you
All
so much
right.
for having me. I really appreciate it, Jessica.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonja. And we will stay
Mhm.
in touch.
All right. Will definitely.